September 2025. I can see that we have present councillors Allison, Anderson, Brogan, Brown, Archie Buchanan, Matthew Buchanan. I have apologies from Councillor Kalikis, but I can see that I'm just going to check if Councillor Chalmers has joined. Not seeing Councillor Chalmers, but we'll keep an eye out for her. Also present today are Councillors Dewar, Devlin and Donnelly. Apologies from Councillor Fagan. Also present today are Councillors Falconer, Frame, Handybode, Councillor Horn. I'm not seeing you present. Also present today are Councillors Horsham, Hose, Logan and MacDonald. I have apologies from Councillor McClyman, and I can see that Councillor Cowie has joined as a substitute. Also present today are Councillors Nugent, Ross, Scott, Walker, Watson and Williams. We have a number of officers in attendance, and with that I'll pass back to yourself, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth Ann. Moving on to the agenda, item 1, any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest, thank you. Item 2, minutes of the previous meeting, and that's page 5 to 12. Can we agree that these are approved as a correct record?
Agreed.
Thank you. Moving on to monitoring items. Item 3 is the Social Work Resources Revenue Budget Monitoring 24 to 25, and that's pages 13 to 22. And could I ask Kathleen to speak to the report? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, everyone. The purpose of this report is to provide information on the actual expenditure against budget for the period the 1st of April 24 to 31st of March 25. At section 5.1, it notes that the resources year-end outturn position was an underspend of 2.208 million before transfers to reserves. This is outlined in the service analysis statement at Appendix A on page 16, which details key highlights by service for the resource. At section 5.2, it notes that after approved transfers to reserves, the resource is showing a break-even position. At section 5.3, the report outlines that the year-end outturn across children and families, justice and performance and support service is an underspend of 1.848 million. This total underspend was transferred to an earmarked reserve at the financial year end to support future children and families pressures. This transfer is shown at Appendix C. The year-end outturn for adult and older people services at Appendix D shows an underspend before transfers to reserves of 360. This includes a commitment to the IGIB of 650,000 and was transferred to their reserves earmarked for future care costs. 350 of the underspend was transferred to reserves to council reserves for committed repair works across social work properties. Appendices B to F on pages 17 to 21 provide details of the projected or the actual position and detailed variance explanations with the proposed variants for each of the services on Appendices C to F. For refer members back to section 2 of the report, the committee is asked to note the break-even position to 31st of March after approved transfers to reserves and to approve the proposed budget variants.
Thank you. I don't see any questions or comments. Do we agree to approve the report? Recommendations do? Agreed. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 4 is the Social Work Resources Revenue Budget Monitoring for 25 and 26, and that's pages 23 to 32. And can I ask Kathleen to speak to that again? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. The report deals with the actual Did everyone hear that? Was that okay? Well, just start again. Right, okay. Yeah, this time the report's dealing with the expenditure for the period the 1st of April to the 11th of July, and it's also providing a forecast for the year to the 31st of March 26. The report reflects the expected forecast outturn on expenditure and income as at the 11th of July. At section 5.1, it notes that at the 11th of July, the resource projected outturn for the financial year is a break-even position. This is outlined in the Service Analysis Statement, Appendix A, which details key highlights for the service and the resource. At section 5.2, it outlines that the resource is working towards managing the overall budget pressures on children and families that continued into 25-26. And at section 5.3 notes that as an interim solution, while further options are being progressed to bring spend in line with budget, there has been a temporary budget realignment of 7.7 million from adult and older people services arising from the reduction in pension contributions. This is the same treatment as in 24-25. In addition, there is 4.2 million held in a reserve within the Council to support the residual pressures in children and family services. Appendices A to F on pages 26 to 31 provide details on the current projected outturn position. Detailed variance explanations and proposed environments for each of the services are shown on appendices C to F.
Thank you.
At section 6.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I was just in case anyone was looking at the appendices. At section 6, the report provides a summary update on the budget recovery actions in relation to the Intensive Family Support Service and the transition to independence. The projected permanent budget shortfall, as reported to committee on the 26th of March, remains unchanged at 3.625 million. I refer members back to section 2 of the report, where committee is asked to note the forecast to the 31st of March 26 of a break-even position, approve the proposed budget environments, and note the summary update on the budget recovery actions.
Okay, thank you. I've got Robert Brown.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I wondered on the budget recovery action relating to the Intensive Family Support Service. I appreciate we're making the target in terms of bringing people home, as it were. But is there anything the other way? Are people being still placed in external placements? Are the numbers going down in line with that, or is there something more complicated about it?
Yeah, in terms of numbers,
That's it.
yeah, okay. In terms of numbers, then we're obviously looking for the overall number of placements to come down. And what we are finding is that when these target numbers are the targeted ones that should reduce the numbers, they are coming down and they're remaining there. So it has been effective.
Yeah, so sorry to just clarify a little bit. Are we in a position where it's going down by the numbers mentioned in the report? There's not new ones going in to sort of balance it at the other end, if you like.
Councillor Brown, do you want
Sorry, who wants to?
Catherine, go.
Liam, do you want
I'll
to?
take that. Councillor Brown, in relation to that, you need to look at the intensive family support and the transition to independence, because they're actually related. One complements the other within that. So in relation to the Bernardo's initiative, we're hitting the target number group that we wanted of 5, and that was going to give us a saving of, I think, around about £500,000 in terms of that budget recovery. But in order to stop people then coming in to fill those beds again, it's the intensive family support is doing that preventative work as well. So they're doing actually bringing the young people back, but also trying to stop them at the front door as well. You'll see within that and in the workforce plan as well, later on, we've actually increased the Bernardo's from 4 houses to 8 houses. And the additional 4 houses is to create space within our children's houses, and that will then assist us again to bring young people back from high-cost placements to our own residential provision, which is cheaper than the high-cost placements, and that's a negotiation that we're currently involved in. Without being overly ambitious, I'd say that the targets that we set are currently being achieved at the moment, and that's been reflected in the budget recovery. And Catherine can maybe back that up with some figures as well.
Okay, thanks for that, Liam. Councillor Anderson.
Thanks, Chair. Just to see how the social work budget has been impacted, given that the council has had to send £15.5 million down to Westminster coffers due to the increase in employee national insurance contributions. Now, we know that education is attributed to £7.5 million of that from their budget, but how much is it impacting on the social work budget? Thanks.
Okay, does someone want to respond? Graham?
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, in terms of the overall national insurance for the council, we did note that it was £15.4 million was the projection for 2025-26, and when we were setting the budget for this year, we also had identified that there would be £8.3 million of that coming from the government, so that left an overall £7.1 million shortfall in terms of that was put into the council's budget for 25-26. In terms of specifically for social work as part of the overall £15.4 million in terms of the cost, the allocation that was made out to social work, including the IHIB, so across all the services, was £3 million. So we do have a funding package for that within the places, but that was from the work that was done as part of setting the budget for this year.
Okay, thanks, Graham. I don't have any further questions. Do we agree to recommendation 2 to approve the report?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Moving on to item 5, it's Social Work Resources Capital Budget Monitoring 24 to 25, and that's pages 33 to 36. And can I ask Graham to speak to the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Item 5 is the final capital budget monitoring report for last financial year 24-25, and the purpose of the report is to remind the committee of the spend up to the end of the financial year. The resources spend was included in the overall position reported to the Executive Committee back in June. Section 3 gives the background and explains the budget position for the year, which was a total budget of £1.027 million, and that budget was unchanged since we last reported to the Social Work Resources Committee back in March. At Section 5, we're detailing the financial implications, and at 5.1, noting the total programme for the year was £1.027 million, with the final spend position being £996,000. And at 5.2, again, we're noting that the minor underspend in these projects, along with the funding, has been carried forward into next financial year as required. And an update on the New Year programme is detailed in the next report to the committee, which I'll take you through shortly. So I would refer committee back to recommendation in section 2 of the report and ask that the social work resources budget of £1.027 million and the final spend for the year of £996,000 be noted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I don't see any questions. Do we agree to recommendations 2 to approve the report?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Moving on to item 6 is the Social Work Resources Capital Budget Monitoring 2025 to 2026, pages 37 to 40, and can I ask Graham to speak to this? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Moving into the new year then, again the standard capital budget monitoring report and the first for this year, and this reflects the budget and spend position up to the 11th of July, which is our accounting period 4. At section 3, again, the background explains that the budget reflects the capital programme for the new year as approved by the Council back in February, and it's been updated to include updates at the Executive Committee in June. Again, as normal, section 5 details the financial implications, and at 5.1, we're noting the total resources capital programme for this year of £337,000, and that's based on the original programme of projects approved in February, updated to include the budget carried forward from 24-25. Based on current information, the budget of £337,000 also reflects the estimated level of spend that we can achieve in 25-26. And at 5.3 in Appendix A, we're noting a full forecast spend for the year against this budget. And for information, the actual expenditure incurred to the 11th of July is £194,000. From section 4, we're providing an update on the Glasgow City Region funding and pilot project that we brought to the previous committee, just in terms of the installation of the smart TVs as part of this initiative. And that pilot has now concluded with funding identified in the Adults and Older People Service budget that will enable that to full rollout of the technology to the Council's other residential care homes and also Blantyre Life. So I would then refer committee back to recommendation in section 2 of the report that the Social Work Resources Capital Programme of £337,000 and full forecast spend be noted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Faulkner.
38 5.4, the Glasgow City Region Smart Connected Services. Yourself, Chair, and myself and the leader of the SNP, Maury Chalmers, visited the David Walker Centre to see this in action, which is it's a very good idea. But I did ask 2 questions then, and I still don't see them answered in this. It's to get away from social isolation and loneliness, which will be fine for the people in David Walker and the 2 homes in East Kilbride. But as Age Concern Scotland repeatedly tell us, out in these communities, we have people who are socially isolated and suffering from loneliness. Indeed, for 5 miles from here, we don't have a lunch club, we don't have a day centre. Question 2 asked, which wasn't answered and still isn't answered, how much is this costing? If we're installing it, David Walker, and the 2 homes in East Kilbride and that other place in Blantyre, how much is this actually costing? Thanks, Chair.
Do you want to take that, Graham?
In terms of the full costs, in terms of can pull some together and provide to the committee following this, just in terms of the original project and also the identified funding that would bring across the plans for the 2 other residential care homes in Blantyre Life. So that's something that can be provided following this.
So how much is it?
I don't have the information in terms of the total cost and just now in terms of all the identified
So we're
funding.
taking a sum, excuse me.
Yeah, I'm sure we can get that information for you, Alan Suman.
Thank you. Good morning, Councillor. So just to confirm, and as you'll see from within the report, the David Walker Gardens installation was paid for by the Glasgow City Region. So the council did not have to pay for the full installation that you saw there and is recovered within the evaluation report. There is then an amount of money that we've made provision for through the Integration Joint Board's adult social care budget on the basis that if the evaluation worked out well and it was found to have been very positive, which in this case it has been, that we then had provision in place to ensure we had the full opportunity to provide this service across all of the residential estates. In other words, to avoid us having an equitable arrangement whereby one home had access to technology and a service provision and the others did not. But just to kind of highlight, as at 5.4, the David Walker Gardens installation, which is the largest aspect of this one, has been paid for by the Glasgow City Region, not by the IGB or indeed the Council. In terms of your earlier point, in terms of loneliness within the community, you're absolutely right to bring the committee's attention to the issues around loneliness as a public health issue. This has been highlighted in a range of reports over many years, not just within the west of Scotland, but obviously across Scotland as a whole, and certainly was something that was exacerbated through the pandemic. From our perspective, we work closely with our partners in terms of the arrangements we can put in place to support certainly vulnerable people within our communities. That certainly ties into the work our care home services do, and particularly the rollout of new technologies that we enable people to connect with our service, and also the work we do with our third sector partners in terms of befriending and other types of support. But ultimately, this isn't just a role for the council to play in. It's a responsibility that sits within everybody in our communities to ensure that we're looking out for those people who could potentially be at risk or have concerns, to make sure we engage with them early. In terms of your point about lunch clubs, ultimately those are decisions for councillors in terms of where you choose to allocate the resources that you make decisions upon when it comes to the budget setting service. But certainly we will make the best use of the resources we are providing in that space. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. We're actually going to play the video after we agree the report. We're going to have a look at the technology and the smart televisions that are now installed in David Walker Gardens, and people will see how they actually work and what the benefits are to the residents. I don't see any other questions. No. Do we agree to recommendation 2 and approve the report? Approved. Agreed. So I think we're going to play the video at this point soon. So I'll hand over to...
A lot of elderly people struggle with smartphones, tablets, and computers. Well, they're very familiar with the TV. They watch more TV than any of the demographics. in partnership with global TV manufacturer LG, created a solution that allows family and friends to send messages and call from their mobiles direct to their loved one's TV. That's the Care Messenger solution. And the project from the Innovation Fund is to put 20 of these systems into a care home in Rutherglen, David Walker Gardens care home, and to address two key things. One is to look at ways in which the system can address social isolation and loneliness, which can be quite common among elderly people, even in a care context in a care home. And also to look at ways in which the system can make communications for the care staff more efficient.
We are sponsoring and hosting a project with Care Messenger within one of our residential care homes at David Walker Gardens. For me, the heart of that's about, well, frankly, it's about connections. Social care and indeed healthcare is all about the connections that we enable people to have with one another. The connection the service users or patients have with the staff who provide care to them, and indeed the connection we're able to foster between them and their families and the communities that they're part of. The Care Messenger project then is a way of digitising that within our care homes to enable residents within their own units, within their own rooms to connect easier with the staff who've got responsibilities to look out for them on a much more responsive basis, but also for them to continue to maintain those connections with their family regardless where they live, whether it be within Scotland, UK or indeed further afield.
So we have been involved in piloting the Shatter TV project and our residential care home. In the past, what we've found is if we're using tablet devices or mobile phones, the screen's very small, it moves, you have to hold it, whereas on the television screen it's a lot bigger, the person's almost the proper size, real size, sitting in front of you, and that's been really effective for our service users. It's made them feel as if they're in the room with them, which is amazing, because they're happy across the world.
And I think, you could live here and still feel lonely, despite having your neighbours, so we appreciate that. And often all that people want is their own family. So for one lady in particular, being able to see her daughters who live so far afield, Dubai and Australia, for her at times where she's perhaps a bit upset or distressed or missing them, she's able to see them on screen, and oh my goodness, that's frightened.
It's quite simple. Yeah, it's basically, they've not given you lots of different options, which is great for us and for the residents. It's a case of, okay, here's your information, and you can look back in your history. So it means that if your family have been on holiday and set some pictures, then you can go back. If they were having a wee low day or something, then you can go into the history, you can look back and say, oh, who's that? Oh, where are they? And then again, more conversations, and then it lifts their spirits, which is really good.
I find it really helpful for my mum. I think she feels more included because when it comes to the phone, she doesn't focus on her phone. She can't focus on that, so having it on the big telly, so it's more realistic for her.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. Obviously, I live in Dubai and my sister Laura, she is in Australia, and so just trying to connect with mum, who now I literally just press a button and it goes straight to TV. It's fantastic. Couldn't be easier. And the fact that she sent photos as well, it's really good.
Partners in this are the South Lanarkshire University Health and Care Partnership, South Lanarkshire Council, David Walker Gardens have been absolutely fantastic, and then we've had the Scottish Digital Health and Care Institute working with Rebecca Thompson on the independent evaluation, and we'd also like to thank the Glasgow City region for funding the entire project through DISA with all their ongoing support. So
Okay, thank you. Just as Alan said, myself and a few other people were actually given a demonstration when we went to visit David Walker Gardens. And one of the things I found really impressive about it is that there was also triggers to remind people to go to social events that were ongoing and taking place, both in David Walker Gardens and the community. Because, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, Alan. It is, you know, hugely important. It's not a replacement for social interaction. Part of it is to actually encourage that and to, you know, put up reminders, remind people what's on and where it's on, and also as well as keeping people in touch with their families that are maybe, you know, abroad or, you know, are not able for whatever reason to actually come and visit them. And as Simon said, it will be evaluated. It's not, this is obviously not being funded by social work as 5G money, but if it evaluates well, it will be looked at in the context of the overall budget in terms of residential homes. I don't know if anybody else wants to comment on it. Councillor Frame.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. I just want to come in and say what an absolute fantastic project, and just the video today just gave us more of a insight of how it's working. And I actually like the part that somebody's maybe not having a good day and they can look back on maybe pictures and different things. It starts a conversation up. So I think it should be applauded, and thanks very much for all the hard work that's been done. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Frame. Councillor Devlin.
Thanks, Chair. It definitely seemed a really good project, and I must admit I wasn't down it. I can understand the benefits that come from it. You're just sitting here thinking, will you ever see a day that something like this will be rolled out to one of the individuals' homes, that they do have that type of connection with families when they're away? Maybe some families will not want it, I know mine would, but they go back. But you know what I mean, that there is that social interaction.
So, excellent point, and I actually think that speaks to the earlier point as well in terms of what we can do to support not just loneliness, but actually make sure our communities are properly connected and engaged in a really positive, strong way. Yes, I think that's, I mean, we'll know this from our own lives. A lot of individuals already have effectively the capabilities within technology within their homes to do this. As the technology progresses, the cost will come down. I think there's a question for what we do as a council, but again, we're only one player within this, so there's an element around actually the investments people make within their own lives, a lot of the technology that will be effectively embedded in new hardware as it becomes available going forward, so we won't need to step into that space. But certainly other areas of investment we've been taking forward in respect of our alarm service and also care surround technologies are giving us similar capabilities. So for those individuals where we have an assessed need in terms of critical substantial, putting in technologies that also will enable them to connect in this way, not just with our services, but with their families, certainly where we see these services going. We're working very closely with a range of partners, academic, and indeed through industry around identifying the opportunities for connecting the technologies we have in order to provide the kind of provision you're talking about. So I would absolutely be optimistic about ability to do that, and hopefully for South Lanarkshire to lead the way.
That's lovely. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any more comments. Let's move on to item 7 on the agenda, Social Work Resources Workforce Monitoring, 1st of April to 30th of June 2025. It's pages 41 to 48. Can I ask Elaine Maxwell to speak to the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. So this report provides the standard employment information for social work resources and covers the period April to June of this year. Section 4.1 goes over the absence statistics for the resource, and you'll see the details are found in Appendix 1. You'll note that the absence rate for the resource for June was 7.3%, and that's in comparison to a council-wide figure of 5.4%. It also represents an increase of 0.1% when compared to the previous month, and we look at last year at the same month, it's increased by 0.3%. As we always do, we project the rate for that month, and we look at it for the projection for the year for 25-26, and the projections are shown for the resource. It will be 8.2% compared with a council-wide projection of 6%. However, it is important to note that the amount of work that the resource actually do in relation to maximising attendance and working with personnel around some quite difficult and complex cases in terms of the size of the workforce, and that's about making sure that we're providing the correct support and the correct advice to employees to encourage them to be able to come back to work quicker, or unfortunately in some occasions where you know, it's perhaps an ill health retirement case. So there is a lot of activity goes on within the resource around maximising attendance. Section 4.2 to 4.5, which is found in Appendix 2, just outlines some of the statistic information in terms of activity that's ongoing, covering occupational health referrals. So you can see that there were 395 recorded for this period, and that is representing an increase of 15 when we look at the same period last year. There were 34 accidents and incidents that were recorded during that period. You can see in terms of the appendix that is showing a bit of a decrease, but what you will know is in terms of we've now moved to the new platform for accident and incident recording, which means they are more current because it's back to that employee self-referral putting these information in. So we will hopefully be able to see a bit more static information and real-life information that's coming through against these in comparison to the same period last year when we were using a couple of different platforms there. There were 14 disciplinary hearings, 1 grievance and no dignity at work issues raised. And there you'll see that there were 26 leavers eligible for an exit interview and 4 exit interviews carried out. Obviously you will know that exit interviews are voluntary, but we do try and encourage employees by sending links you know, to make sure that we can capture information to get reasons why people are leaving the organisation where we can. In terms of Section 5, which is in Appendix 3, in that detailing the staffing watch information, you'll see that there was a decrease of 20 employees in post between the last period in March that was reported to the period in the 14th of June. And with that, I would refer committee back to Section 2 of the report and ask you to note the workforce monitoring information for the resource for the period April to June 2025. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Frame.
Yep, thanks very much, Chair. It's just a quick question. From obviously the revenue budget, we know that there's a underspend due to recruitment. Is to see what implications that's having on the absence figure. Is that having any implications of people working longer hours, or and are they going off sick? It's to see if there's any if we get any update on that. Thank you.
I don't have any information that would correlate to individuals going off sick as a result of covering for, you know, for other absences. So I don't have that information. It's not something that we would be able to gain just through, you know, the absence statistics. But what you would hope, if there were any issues that the manager was dealing with that in terms of the attendance support meetings, etc. Obviously, we are working very closely, our recruitment team are working really closely in terms of trying to make sure that our vacancies are recruited and filled as quickly as possible along with the service managers. But if there's nothing that's been highlighted to me as that has been a specific cause for concern, but it is something, if the personnel are made aware of anything like that, that would be something that we would pick up with the resource, but it's not something that is been brought to your attention at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any more questions. Do we agree to recommendation 2 to approve the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. Moving on to items for decision. Item 8 is Social Work Resources Workforce Plan 2025 to 2027, pages 49 to 98. And could I ask Elaine to speak to that as well? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So you'll see that this is quite a lengthy document in terms of what's been attached in relation to the workforce plan. But the purpose of this report is to provide an update on Social Work Resources Workforce Plan and seek your approval for that plan, which covers, as you say, Chair, the period 2025 to 2027. In terms of background, you'll see that the workforce planning cycles aligned with the council plan, which covers the period 22 to 27, and reflects the themes that are captured within that plan. You'll also know that the Council's workforce strategy was approved on the 28th of May at Exec Committee alongside the Council's workforce plan. And the workforce strategy sets out the workforce planning framework to produce the Council resource plans. The purpose of the plan is to identify any actions that are required to ensure that the Council has the right people in the right place at the right time to deliver, obviously, our key Council services. In terms of the process, it was led by the HR Business Manager, working very closely with resource management teams to identify what was required. And that involved looking across the resource, looking at horizon scanning. We have toolkits and templates that we had to complete, as well as reviewing the previous actions that covered the period 2022 to 2025. And in doing all of that, there was 5 strategic priorities that were detailed, and you'll see that that's been highlighted within section 4 of the report. And these cover, as I say, 5 key areas: recruitment, attraction and retention. And obviously we know that the challenges that we have that we're facing, and when we look at the staff demographics, and particularly our recruitment and retention into social care. In terms of action, we're looking, and we have done a grow your own approach. We're also looking at succession planning, any graduate recruitment, and trying to identify proper career pathways and promoting the council as an employer of choice. Looking then at transformation, the challenges we're facing in terms of the financial pressures, in terms of delivering the services to meet the budget gap, but at the same time maintaining statutory service delivery, and looking at the Care Reform Act implications. Skills gap, we obviously have identified that there are skills gaps across the resource, and particularly when we look at digital and change management skills, and these are being addressed through the learning and development strategy. We have to then look at the delivery of the key resource activities, and the challenges that are faced within there in terms of the increased demands on the service, alongside the ongoing budget pressures, at the same time progressing any digital innovation. The resource action there is about reviewing staffing levels and the skills, as well as ensuring that anybody in terms of these qualifications and the standards are being maintained. And finally, around employee wellbeing, the challenges obviously we've mentioned there in terms of absence management, at the same time looking at our employee resilience and an ongoing employee engagement. We have recruited additional resources to support managers with maximising attendance, and there's an ongoing review of employee wellbeing initiatives, and we continually engage with the trade unions. Employee wellbeing is an area that we are focused on. It's about what other information, what can we do to support our employees, because we do appreciate the complexity of life out there, as well as ongoing work challenges. Moving on then to the monitoring and implications within the report. So you'll see that the plan is monitored by the senior management team, and there will be annual updates to the committee on the progress of its actions. There are no direct financial or environmental implications, and the risks and actions are included in the social work and IGB risk registers. So with that, I would refer committee back to section 2 of the report and ask the recommendations that the Social Work Resources Workforce Plan covering the period of 25 to 27 be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. Councillor Brown.
Chair, I'd like to ask a little bit about recruitment and retention, which is developed at page 58 in particular of the action plan. You've indicated the background of a challenging labour market, but on the other hand, you've said that you've managed to be able to recruit not least care workers and people like that into the system. Is the labour market changing in that regard? Because there was a certain extent of reliance on people coming in from abroad, wasn't there before? Is that are we finding there's enough people to be able to recruit there? And secondly, in terms of the actual in-house stuff, the care academy and all that, can you give us any kind of feeling of the numbers involved of people that we're actually able to develop in-house, as it were, as opposed to recruiting from somewhere else?
Ian?
I can pick up some of those points, Councillor. So, I mean, as we've reported in this committee before, we've taken a number of steps to try and make an attractive offer, I suppose, to the potential workforce out there. So we have done work both in adults and children's services around social workers, for example, to strengthen the career pathway and encourage people to come and work for us or stay with us. And that's broadly been successful at this stage, but it's clearly something we need to keep an eye on because there is competition across neighbouring authorities for a relatively scarce workforce. We have been successful in recruiting staff into the internal service, care home, residential care, for example. But as the workforce plan lays out, we've got a preponderance of staff at the older age of the working age spectrum, and that's obviously a concern for us going forward as that kind of cohort is leaving the workplace. There's a more limited supply of people coming through, so we do need to kind of be thinking of that going forward, and that's what we're trying to pick up in the workforce plan. So a lot of the work we've done around looking at job grades around care home and trying to make the job as attractive as we can do and improve the levels of support for staff, I think are vital to all of that. So that's kind of the work will be continuing. In terms of Care Academy, that's still a work in progress. Essentially, we're really trying to pull together some of the work around employability and thinking about how we work collaboratively with the colleges to draw more people into the social care workforce to create that kind of supply chain, as it were, of people who are job ready to come into work for not just the council, but also our partners in the independent sector who play a vital role in supporting our citizens.
Could I come back on the Care Academy for me? Because you're saying it's a work in progress, but it's been something we've been talking about now for how long? 4 or 5 years, maybe something of that sort. One would have hoped it would be a bit more than a work in progress by this time. Is anybody actually going through the Care Academy arrangements at this stage or not?
Assuming you want to pick that up.
So, thank you. So, you're absolutely right in terms of the arrangement. So it's important to note this Care Academy isn't a quote-unquote academy. It's an arrangement between a number of organisations about how we identify and attract individuals into health and social care. In the first instance, better coordinating existing routes and then also identifying others aspects. So the care, it's more important to appreciate the Care Academy isn't like a college in that regard. As Ian highlighted, we're continuing to do work within that space to identify more opportunities in respect to it, but you're also very right that there are, it's not as if we haven't been doing anything in the meantime. So what actually might be quite pertinent on this one is where Ian and Liam to talk about the graduate apprenticeship schemes that we've just got going on, because actually we've just put out invitations to in-house staff this very week about the opportunity for them to train as social workers through supported courses. So that's one very powerful example of actually arrangements we've already got in place. Also, and you'll recognise this from having been presented to the Executive Committee, we've committed to the employability promise within the Council. So again, there's not how we grow our own in terms of providing opportunities for care experienced young people into careers within the Council, and that absolutely includes social care and social work. And indeed, it's in many cases appropriate for those individuals to think about social care and social work as a potential career for them, given that they've been raised by people who work within those fields and professions, and they've seen the impact that they can have on individuals. But Liam, Ian, do you want to talk about the graduate apprenticeship scheme? Because I think that's particularly timely. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so this is a really welcome development. I would imagine folks in the room would be aware of graduate apprenticeship, schemes which are helping students get relevant qualifications to graduate level, and what's come on stream recently is that kind of model for social work. So this really will provide an opportunity for our current workforce to move into kind of qualified social worker roles. So we do employ a range of folks working in jobs such as social worker assistants, family support workers, care at home, where in a way there's a kind of barrier to career progression if you don't have the right qualifications. So this provides an opportunity for people already working in social care, for example, to achieve those qualifications, and also then helps us with the the challenge of the supply of social workers into jobs. So hopefully, existing staff and beyond, perhaps as the scheme evolves and rolls out, will have more opportunities to secure themselves, a qualification in social work, and then move into social work positions and help us with that workforce supply challenge.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Councillor Frame.
Thanks very much, Chair. I just want to really welcome this report. It's nice to see the 5 key areas all set out for the workforce plan, to see the work that has been done. A question that I've really got is, I remember years ago when I was at secondary school, so it was many years ago, that we went out on work placements and different things. If we looked into the workforce plan, and maybe, I know we said about going to colleges, but it's starting to be a bit earlier, going into secondary schools and promoting the social work and promoting the care as a career, and maybe starting off a wee bit earlier to see what we can be, the options out there are. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, I think we do that. I'll pass over to Elaine.
Thanks, Councillor Frame. I think there's a couple of different areas, certainly within the secondary school, in terms of that. I'm probably of a similar age that recall when you were at high school, you would go out and do a work placement for a week in an area. And actually, interestingly, although I've ended up in HR, I did one in a care home. So in terms of my work experience for that week, I think things have changed a wee bit in the high schools, just based on my own knowledge of my own kids in terms of that work experience. It's not quite the same as it was then. But certainly our high schools have quite a number of kind of open days or open evenings for parents, particularly when the kids are getting to the point where they're choosing subjects, and the universities and people have stalls. And there are people from South Lanarkshire Council that do attend these to give students in within the high schools a knowledge of what posts are available. So there's a couple of things that are ongoing within the education setting, but perhaps not exactly similar to what you would remember in terms of that work placement week. I think things have changed a wee bit around that side, but I certainly could get a further update from education around that in terms of what actually happens in that area.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Chair. Probably under recruitment and retention, my experience is that we've got a lot of good carers, but I've left the sector because of what they're getting asked to do. I think we've got good carers and we'll have good administrators, but sometimes it's hard to get both in one person. And I think carers are being asked to fill form after form and report after report, and they're not getting a chance to actually do the caring and choose then to leave the sector. I get why we need the paperwork, not necessarily from a council point of view, but from other bodies, etc. But have we looked at using the skill sets of good carers and letting them care, and using the skill sets of people that are maybe good in computers, good with English, good with words, and letting them do reports? But just now we're trying to get, from what I believe, individuals to do both. And in some cases it might work, but in a lot of cases, in my experience, it's not. And maybe just comment on that, because I think if we're trying to get folk to come into the industry or the sector, let's make it attractive to what they want to do and not push them into doing things that maybe they're not comfortable doing. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'll let Ian respond to that. Thanks.
So I recognise what you're saying there in terms of we want people freed up to deliver care. That's the most important thing. But we're also delivering care in a sector where there's a lot of regulation and there's a professionalised workforce. You have to work to professional standards in terms of their own registration. So elements of working to support plans, documenting the activities you've completed, or just go with the territory. I mean, to address some of those concerns, if I take Carey Home as an example, over recent years we've invested in like social work assistants whose job it is to undertake the assessments, produce the support plans, review those on a regular basis in consultation with the staff delivering direct care. So essentially the carers are not having to do that work, but they have to work to the product of that activity. So when they're going to deliver someone's care, they need to be very clear about the tasks to be delivered, and you know, around medication support, for example, or you know, activities of daily living. So that they work to a support plan, and you know, in terms of their registration and the care inspector's expectations, they do need to document, you know, I was in the house today, I completed the tasks, you know, that type of thing. So we'll not get away from that, but we are actively trying to look at how we support our staff to be, you know, as freed up as they can be to deliver direct care. And you know, some of the stuff we already touched on this morning around digital solutions. You know, we're looking at UIT systems, for example, and other forms of digital inputs that will help our front-facing workforce. You know, take away some of that administrative elements and release time for care. So that there's other thoughts in the background around that. So I absolutely get your point, but we are kind of bound by governance and professional standards we have to work to as well.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Yeah.
So, sorry, I don't dispute what you're saying there, but I think we need to take cognizance of that. I say, except because of the regulations and all the rest of it, we need to have that documented. But the way it's structured just now, unless things have changed, is that carers are leaving the sector because it's not what they signed. They signed up to care, and they didn't sign up to do all the paperwork, and they would care all night long, all day long. But they're now being challenged and put under pressure to do things that they're not comfortable with. And if we're wanting to attract more people in, then if you want to say it's capable of doing maybe both, we're maybe going to need to look at the salary ranges, etc. If we're wanting to attract people in that, you know, we want to do basically as competent and comfortable doing what we're asking them to do. We've got people in care homes now that are doing work that in the past would have been done by district nurses, etc. There's more and more burden getting put on the care workers, and at some time it's just going to crack unless support's been given. But that's my opinion on it, and you've acknowledged some of that's maybe correct, and hopefully we can rectify some of that. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm not really sure we actually have evidence for that. Will I bring Kirsty in, or do one of you want to? Kirsty?
Hi, thanks, Councillor Watson. You're kind of touching on a lot of issues there, but you know, my understanding in terms of recruitment in the care industry isn't so much about anxieties about completing paperwork, and my understanding is that carers across any organisation, their responsibility for paperwork would involve, for example, completing a daily care diary. They're not tasked with completing assessments. That's social workers and social work assistants that do that. I think there's other much more significant issues in relating to carer recruitment, such as pay, and obviously here in South Lanarkshire we have the highest paid home care staff in the country, and that's something that we are obviously very proud of. But obviously there's other pressures on the workforce as well, such as status, perceived status. And I think your concern about carers undertaking paperwork, I think that's very much, my understanding is very much low on the list of kind of issues and challenges facing the sector.
Thanks, Kirsty. I mean, certainly I know that in response to what was said in the BAR report, a key issue that did come out among social workers was that a lot of their time was being tied up with paper workers. And in responding to that, I mean, South Lanarkshire kind of remodelled the whole service, as Ian is saying. Social work assistants, many more of them became trained in doing assessments and paperwork, which took some of that off the social work role, and that has certainly improved in the terms of the remodelling of the service that we've done. Ian can come in if I'm wrong, it wasn't one of the key issues in terms of home carers. As Kirsty says, a lot of other issues around in that, particularly a developed career pathway, which I think the developments outlined in the workforce planning report will specifically tackle. And I think it's very positive that you can now go into a modern apprenticeship or a graduate apprenticeship, which will broaden the career pathway for a lot of people. And some of the posts that have been created through the remodelling will create opportunities for people as well. So I would think we have went a significant journey in terms of addressing what the Setting the Bar report actually highlighted were the issues that people were struggling with, and particularly in terms of the numbers of caseloads that people had. So I'm not sure if that can answer your question or anyone else wants to. Ian.
Yeah, just coming with a bit of additional information. I mean, one of the areas I hope we would take comfort from is looking at care inspectorate grades. I mean, all of our care home services have been subject to scrutiny over recent times, and they all came out with very strong results. And that includes talking to carers around how they're feeling about the job, are they being properly supported, are they can be given the correct support and guidance. So I think we can be assured that because of the grades are strong, that currently that regime is in place, and we're getting that balance right in terms of the system overall, in terms of the tasks we're asking people to do, and the array of different disciplines that we've got in play now to wrap around the individual service user and play to people's strengths in terms of their skill sets.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any more questions. Do people agree to recommendation 2 and approve the report? Agreed. Thank you. Moving on to item 9, enhancing capacity for quality and value, pages 99 to 102. And could I ask, sorry, Ian again to speak to that? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So this report is really updating the committee on the work of our commissioning and assurance team, and then going on to seek approval to develop and expand the team. So folks may recall that about 3 years ago we agreed to create this team to make sure we had more eyes and scrutiny over our external contracts, to make sure we're getting good value for money, and to make sure that the right services were in place for service users. So the team has very much delivered on that. They've supported the IGB in terms of delivering a balanced budget, but more importantly, they're making sure that we're making good use of scarce resources for folks with complex needs and getting people into the right placements. As we move through the report, we'll highlight just the large number of people we support through our various framework contracts and through supported living, care at home, etc. Considerable amount of money that's spent in that area. And really what we're seeing is the team as it currently stands is a bit too modest in scale to kind of fully address all the contract monitoring and placement support activity that we'd really like to have in place. So we're really proposing that we invest a little bit more in this team to give us sufficient coverage to look at the contracts in a more holistic, more widespread way. There's, in terms of funding, this proposal is being funded in a couple of different ways. One component would be basically the reuse of resources that they're saving, so they're finding financial efficiencies. So we reinvest some of that money in developing the team, and the other element would be pulling existing resource from localities where we've got lots of people doing bits and pieces around contract monitoring, and really concentrating that resource and developing expertise and giving this team a bit more scale to support us with both the financial and operational challenges going forward. So really asking the committee to look at the recommendations in section 2 to note the contents of the report and agree the proposals for developing the service.
Okay, thanks, Ian. I don't have any questions. Sorry, Councillor Allison.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Just a bit of clarity, really. The extra staff being taken on, half of them are more senior managers. We only had one manager, if you like, and 4 what do you call them, planning officers previously. We're changing that round and having a lot more senior managers in comparison to what I would call frontline operatives. Why?
Okay, so I think you need to see this through the lens of we're dealing with kind of service users with complex needs, and we're dealing with kind of complex negotiations with external providers. So really what we're proposing here is we're bringing in practice expertise. So the managers we've got here are practitioners. They're folks who are very experienced social work practitioners who are able to understand the nuances of the needs of the individual service users, and who are able to engage in often tricky and complex negotiations with providers. So we need, seasoned, experienced eyes and skill set deployed in this area of work. That's what we've got in the current team. They do a great job, and we're really looking to pull in more of that expertise to deliver on this. So this is some of our most complex work with some of our most high dependency service users we're talking about. So we need the right expertise around these situations to get the right outcomes.
Thank you. Sorry, Kirsty.
Hi, thanks for that. So obviously there'll be 4 social workers as well moving into that team. Could you maybe talk a bit about, you mentioned placement support, that this team will provide placement support. Can you maybe provide a few kind of examples of what that kind of looks like? Thanks.
Sure. So, some of the work the team has been involved in has been looking at some of our service users are placed out with the South Lanarkshire area, often in quite complex situations, and sometimes people who have been in hospital for lengthy periods of time, to try and ensure we can move them into safe community-based placements that meet their needs. So these are often folks who require round-the-clock care, may require more than one member of staff around them at any one point in time. So working with providers to identify placements, to build up staff teams to support that individual and set the correct placement conditions to move them into their new care arrangements safely and effectively and sustainably is really vitally important. So that's the kind of activity they've been doing day in and day out. And alongside that, they've also been having a look at a range of contracts that we've had in place for quite some time, just to make sure we're getting good value for money, and sometimes we've not been. Sometimes the circumstances have moved on, so we've been able to look at reinvesting that money in different ways. So that's the kind of work that we'll be continuing to do, and that's why we need a skill mix within the team. We need social workers who are good in assessment, but fundamentally need to be led by people who are not just strong managers, but very strong practitioners who can have often, challenging conversations with providers about, the type of arrangement they want to set in play and how much services are going to cost. So we really need the right skill set within that team, and that's what they're really proposing today.
Thanks, Ian. Sorry. Yeah, we've also agreed, obviously, that any sort of implications in relation to the services and service users and the model of the services will be brought back to this committee, and where appropriate will be discussed by the IGB as well, because it will have implications in terms of the changes of the model of services for people, including the nature of residential care in some instances, and as you say, people that have previously that are coming back into the community. But obviously that will be discussed by this committee and by the IGB, and obviously by ourselves at various different points. I mean, the impact of this will be monitored. Okay, thank you. I don't see any more questions. Do we agree to recommendations 2 to approve the report?
Agreed.
Agreed, thank you. So moving on to items for noting, item 10 is a self-directed support update, and it's pages 103 to 110, and it's Ian again. Thank you.
Okay, so this report is really just providing an update on the work around self-directed support and our participation in a new initiative around SDS improvement. So the committee will be pretty familiar with the Self-Directed Support Act. It's been on the go for a wee while now, and the 4 key options in terms of the for the supported adult in terms of the care. Do they want direct payment? Do they want us to organise care on their behalf, for example? So the paper sets out that just for a bit of background. So as we move through into section 4, we talk about the process around SDS, which is really about undertaking an assessment of the individual, thinking about their outcomes and the risks around their circumstance. That then leads on to us identifying what the eligible needs are, developing an outcomes focused support plan with an identified council contribution towards the budget. So roughly up to kind of 10-week timeline from start to finish in terms of a typical case before services are fully in play. The section 4 then goes on to talk a little bit about some of our partners in this work, Equal Advocacy, Take Control, Lanarkshire Carers and Actions for Children, for example. So these organisations do play an important role in working with our social workers and our service users and carers in terms of making sure we've got the right supports in place around self-directed support. We talk a little bit about some of the improvement activity. I chair a group which is looking at monitoring our SDS work, looking at how we can make it better, and we talk a bit about the report around some of the training activity that we've been doing for our workforce, looking at some of our public information being a bit more effective and more communicative, and hopefully that's starting to have an impact. And in the document, we also talk a bit about some of the performance figures. So I think increasing numbers of people picking up on the SDS approach. We note in 410 our position around the local government benchmarking framework, which in some ways is not where we would want it to be. I think that there's an issue with this particular indicator, and it only kind of concentrates on really the options 1 and 2 around direct payments and self-directed support planning. One of the options that are available to folks is just to go with existing services. So as we've already touched on this morning, the Council does provide a broad range of very good quality services. So in a way, if the service user opts to choose to go to a council day centre or choose to use the care home services we provide rather than take a direct payment, that kind of counts against us in a way in terms of the local government benchmarking framework indicator. So it's a kind of interesting indicator in terms of measuring performance around SDS, and it's perhaps not fully inclusive of the entire picture. Hopefully the report provides a kind of overview of the work that's been ongoing and the progress we're making around self-directed support, and really ask the committee to look to the recommendations in section 2 of the report, just to note the work that's ongoing, and I'm happy to pick up any questions folks may have.
Thanks, Ian. I don't see any questions. Sorry, Councillor Allison.
Too slow each time. Ian, is there an issue then in the rural area where perhaps there isn't the same level of service that practitioners, constituents can source, and we are simply being left then to pick up these care packages, if you like? And is that affecting our standing, if you like, in these figures?
I don't think rurality plays a significant impact in these figures in particular, but there are definitely challenges in terms of the range of resources depending on where you stay. So one of the things I think we've touched on in the report is, for example, the supply of personal assistance. So if people are taking a direct payment, they'll often use that money to recruit a PA. So our Take Control colleagues who help us in that work are indicating to us that the supply of PAs is not where we're likely to be. It can sometimes be quite challenging, finding the right PA for the individual. And I suspect that's probably a bit more amplified in some of the more rural areas of Clydesdale, where again the workforce supply for this kind of social care work may be scarce. We also see in the Clydesdale area, as I think you'll know, that sometimes the external market is less keen to respond there, they're obviously looking to turn a profit. So they're thinking about, have I got enough work in this area to employ staff and take account of the cost of travel time and so forth. So we do try and incentivise providers by paying a little bit of a premium in from more rural areas to encourage them to take up business. But it is definitely a challenge, and one of the challenges that we're currently looking at to see whether there's a different way of tackling that particular problem.
Okay. Thank you. I think in terms of the numbers of staff now that have been trained and are now involved in actually carrying out self-directed supports has actually moved quite a significant way. And I think we are in fact meeting the targets, but obviously there are still challenges around that, some of which we've discussed previously in relation to workforce planning. But I think in terms of the particularly financial environment that we're working in and the issues around some of this, I think we're making significant and good progress. Okay, thank you. I don't see any more questions. Do we agree to recommendation 2, approve the report? Yeah, agreed. Thank you. Moving on to item 12, it's the Children's Care Experience and Services. Sorry, I've missed one. Item 11, the Independent Living Fund Scotland update. It's pages 111 to 114. And could I ask Ian to speak to that again? Thank you.
Okay, so again, this report is providing an update on the reopening of the Independent Living Fund. As we've set out in the report, the Independent Living Fund's been on the go for quite some time. I think the first version of it was in 1988. There's been a number of versions of it over the years. The current arrangements were basically been reopened last year. So this is a fund that provides a budget to folks with disabilities over and above the budget essentially that we would provide to assess needs. So it provides additionality in terms of quality of life and so forth. So it's a very welcome fund. So we're pleased that the fund reopened. It's a limited fund, so we were given an allocation of 67 budgets out of the allocation of across Scotland. So last year the team, the central team supported localities to identify service users who may be eligible and may benefit from the fund, and successfully progressed a number of applications, and that work's ongoing to make sure we uptake the full allocation. So the criteria requires there to be a care package in place, a quite substantial care package before the person's then eligible for additional funding. In the paper we note that there's probably some groups where they could be applying for funding and perhaps have not done so. Older people with mental health issues, for example, as we set out in 411. So some of the improvement activities the team's currently taking forward is to make sure that there's access, wider access to the funds for all those who may be eligible within South Lanarkshire. So hopefully this is a kind of a positive story we're telling here in this report. So we very much welcome the funds becoming available, and we've been working quite hard to make sure that they're spent. And I think there's about £220,000 or so was kind of brought into the area at the start of the financial year. That sum will hopefully increase as we take up the full allocation.
Okay, thanks Ian. Councillor Brown.
Thanks very much for the report. I don't think I fully understand the figures, particularly at 4.8. There's a £9 million fund of which we get £212,000. That's 1/45 approximately. 32 local authorities, of which we're one of the bigger ones. So there's a bit of an issue about how does the allocation made in the first place, and why are we so low down on the criterion. Then you've got the business of the 67 allocation, and we've only had 22 converted by the end of the financial year. About 55 of them have been accepted. What's the sort of story about that? Is there some sort of delay that's when I'm not seeing there, or what's the ball game on that one? It's clearly an additionality report, as Ian has been saying, so we need to make as much advantage of this as we can. Are we doing that?
Yes, so I think essentially what we're trying to say in the report is we've progressed, the majority of our allocation. So I can get the arithmetic checked out and then come back to you just to verify that the figures are all are all correct. But essentially, it's a process. So it's a process of identifying locally the person who may be eligible, working with them to then complete an application. The application is submitted to the Independent Living Fund to scrutinise it and then make a decision as to when the funds are available. So essentially, most of our allocation, we've submitted applications on behalf of the service user, and then we're waiting for the Independent Living Fund to come back and confirm or not that they're releasing the funds. And when we've benchmarked with other local authorities, I think we're doing pretty well in terms of our response in terms of getting applications in and getting them accepted. So I think the performance is quite good around that. But I take your point around the arithmetic, and I'll just double check that we've got that right.
Yeah. Is there an addition? I mean, it sounds as if it's an underspent fund. If we're having 67, 56 have been submitted, 55 accepted, and we're doing better than others, it sounds as if the fund's underspent. Do we happen to know if that's the ballgame or not?
Well, I think it was perhaps a bit slow to get going, is my understanding, and because the fund had not been opened for quite some time, there's probably a kind of knowledge gap around the workforce in terms of what's this fund about, how do we make use of it. So one of the tasks for the manager headquarters, leading this work was to basically to skill up the workforce, raise awareness, make sure they knew what they were doing, and I think that's probably being replicated across Scotland. So I think that's we've certainly moved that work forward, and see if we've got the applications in. I would be fairly certain that the funds will be taken up. The full allocation will be, the applications will go in due course. And the funds will be, basically it's a long-term funding stream, so the service users will get the benefit of that in the longer run.
Thank you. Councillor Logan.
Thanks very much, Chair. Just listening to it and reading it, etc., is it not a bit bureaucratic? Is that not one of the problems? It sounds to me as if it's a bit bureaucracy, where, you don't have control, if I'm picked you up correctly. So you don't have direct control. They've not actually said, here you think you check who's eligible. So I find that the more bureaucracy there is, that people sort of shy away or just don't bother. So to me, it sounds as if it's bureaucracy for bureaucracy's sake. I don't know, but it just sounded a bit bureaucratic to me. Thank you.
So I can confirm that there is layers of process in here. So essentially, our social worker is working with the adult. So we've already completed an assessment. We've already, agreed an STS budget. We've got services organised. So this is about additionality. So we're then working with the service user to complete the application, identify how the funds could be used to their benefit, and then a separate body is then scrutinising that application and making a decision before the money is released. So that there is layers to the process, you're correct.
Okay, thank you. Suman.
Thank you. Just to add to Ian's point, so for clarity, and I think your question reflects this. So this is a process which has been designed nationally. As you'll have seen under 4.1, it sets out the responsibilities that we've been given as a council that we need to discharge. The report sets out how we're discharging those. And as you'll also noted within the financial implications section of the report, and this speaks to an earlier point that was made, no additional resources have been provided to the council. And so, as Ian said, our staff are spending the time because we absolutely want to maximise the opportunities for individuals within South Lanarkshire. But again, speaking to that earlier point, ultimately decisions are made by the ILF. Thank you.
Do you want to come? Yeah. Okay, thanks for that. I don't see any more questions, points. Do we agree to note the report?
Agreed.
Agreed, thank you. Moving on to next item is Children Care Experience and Services Planning Scotland Bill, and it's pages 115 to 124. I think, is it Diane that's going to speak to that?
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everyone. The purpose of the report
is to inform the committee of the call for views in relation to the Children Care Experiences and Services Planning Scotland Bill. The recommendations in the report at point 2 ask that the response be noted, and also to note that the consultation opened on the 27th of June and the SLC response was submitted on the 15th of August. The bill was developed on the back of the care review and the promise, and the bill focuses on the key areas which are outlined at section 3. And these include specifically on the right of care experienced young people under the age of 16 to be able to apply for aftercare, advocacy for all young people, guidance on care experience, limiting the profits from residential care, requiring foster carers to register as a charity, a register of foster carers, and changes to the children's hearing system, as well as changes to service planning. The response that was submitted from South Lanarkshire was very supportive of the intentions of the bill, but expressed concerns over the financial modelling, given the absence of that within the paper and our ability to implement that. So I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. Any points or comments? Kirsty?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Diane, for that. I suppose, again, as you know, our response, as ever, kind of highlights that whilst the ambitions of this bill might be laudable, although there are some concerns around it, the overarching kind of theme is, yet once again, we have proposals of new legislation that has significant impact on resources for local authorities, but it's silent actually on how the issue of funding these proposals will be undertaken. And this is, as I say, another piece of legislation, and we've just spoken about the ILF and how social workers have to take time out of their diaries to support people in accessing funds, again, without any additional funding from the Scottish Government. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Kirsty. I don't see any further comments. I would just echo basically what Kirsty said. I think that the response is very well laid out. We obviously, it reflects practice in terms of the principles entailed, and also in the promise. Obviously reflects all our the integrated children's services plan, the work that we're doing. The issue is one of the current environment that we're in that's creating the challenges and difficulties around that. And certainly in terms of the restructuring any planning relating to children's services in terms of the consultation that took place around the National Care Service, that proved to be quite unpopular. So I don't see any more comments. Do we agree to note the report? Okay, thank you. I don't have any other items of urgent business. So with that, could I thank people for attending, and thank you for your contributions, and thank the officers for their clear and comprehensive reports as always, and thanks to Elizabeth Ann. Thank you.
Thank you very much.